The arrival of the unsettling guests. The Grand Evermore Hotel stood as a symbol of luxury and refinement in the heart of the city. Its towering presence, adorned with gleaming glass panels and golden embellishments, made it a beacon of wealth and exclusivity. Inside, the air carried the scent of expensive perfumes, fresh-cut lilies, and polished mahogany, all blending into the unmistakable aroma of opulence. The kind of place where only the world's elite could afford to stay, where every need was met with impeccable service, and where staff were trained to accommodate without question. Donna Morales had worked at the Grand Evermore for 5 years. At 35, she had become one of the most efficient maids on staff, known for her sharp attention to detail and her ability to work unnoticed. The night shift suited her, quieter, less chaotic than the bustling daytime hours. It allowed her to focus on her work while avoiding the social complexities of dealing with high-maintenance guests. But tonight, something was different. At precisely 10:30 p.m., Dana was dusting the ornate molding near the entrance when the grand glass doors slid open with a whisper. A man strode in, exuding wealth and confidence in every step. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored midnight blue suit, the crispness of his collar and the glint of his cufflinks hinting at a lifestyle reserved for the privileged. His shoes clicked against the polished marble, and behind him trailed a young girl, her presence starkly contrasting his polished demeanor. The girl couldn't have been older than 10. She had wide, curious eyes that darted around the grand lobby, taking in every detail with an awe that seemed almost childlike. But it wasn't her wonder that unsettled Dana. It was her clothes. Her dress was wrinkled and stained, the hem frayed as if it had seen too many days without a wash. Her shoes were cheap plastic knockoffs, the kind Donna had seen at dollar stores. They were scuffed, worn down at the soles, and several sizes too big for her small feet. Everything about her screamed that she did not belong in this world of luxury. Donna had seen enough wealthy families pass through the hotel to know their children were always well-dressed, perfectly groomed, and familiar with grandeur. But this girl, she looked like she had just stepped off the streets. Her instincts told her something wasn't right. Still, she maintained her professional demeanor as she approached them. "Welcome to the Grand Evermore," she greeted, her voice warm yet formal. "How may I assist you this evening?" The girl blinked up at Dana, then turned her gaze back to the shimmering crystal chandelier that adorned the lobby ceiling. "It looks like a princess's castle," she whispered in awe. The man beside her chuckled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're the princess here, darling," he said, his voice smooth. "Practiced, too practiced." Dana's unease deepened. Her eyes flickered over to the front desk, where the night manager, Ronald, had noticed the newcomers. Donna, unsure whether to speak up, decided to tread carefully. "I'm sorry, sir," she began, choosing her words cautiously, "but we do have a dress code for guests. Perhaps the young lady would like to change into something more suitable." The reaction was immediate. The man's face darkened, his jaw tightening. His entire demeanor shifted, his easygoing charm replaced by cold fury. "Don't you know who I am?" he snapped, his voice laced with indignation. "How dare you speak to my daughter that way? She's just a child who got dirty playing outside. Or are you suggesting I should change her right here in the lobby, in front of you?" Dana took an instinctive step back, startled by the outburst. Before she could respond, Ronald intervened smoothly, appearing at her side. "Mr. Langley, please accept my sincerest apologies," he said, flashing a practiced smile. "Dana usually works the day shift. She's unfamiliar with our valued night guests. As an apology, allow me to offer you a complimentary spa package. We provide both adult and children's massage services." Mr. Langley's face relaxed slightly at the offer. He nodded, accepting the key card handed to him by the receptionist. Without another word, he and the girl walked away toward the elevators. As they disappeared from sight, Ronald turned to Donna, his expression firm. "You need to learn when to not ask questions, Donna," he murmured. "The night shift is different from the day shift. People like him, they expect privacy." Dana swallowed hard, nodding, but the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. Later that night, Dana was given the task of escorting the pair to their penthouse suite. She had no choice but to comply. Despite the unease curling in her stomach, she grabbed the small suitcase Mr. Langley had brought and glanced at the girl. "Would you like me to carry your backpack?" she offered. The girl hesitated before handing it over. As Dana took it, she noticed how light it was, almost empty. Another oddity. They entered the elevator in silence. The ride up was suffocating. Mr. Langley's presence was heavy, his impatience palpable. Meanwhile, the girl, standing between them, hugged herself as if trying to disappear. As the elevator chimed on the penthouse floor, Dana led them down the hallway, her footsteps muffled by plush carpeting. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Halfway to their suite, the girl spoke up. "I'm hungry," she said, her voice small. Dana glanced at her, noticing the way her fingers curled around the fabric of her dress. "We'll order something when we get to the room." "Sophie," Mr. Langley replied. Her name. "Sophie. Do they have grilled cheese?" Sophie asked, a hopeful lilt in her voice. "They have much more than grilled cheese here," Mr. Langley said, his tone indulgent. "You can order whatever you like." "Yay." Sophie's excitement was fleeting. The moment Mr. Langley shot her a warning look, she fell silent. Dana's unease spiked. The girl was not comfortable with him. When they reached the penthouse suite, Dana prepared to give the standard room tour. But before she could even take a step inside, Mr. Langley raised a hand. "That won't be necessary," he said coldly. "Just send up a bottle of Chateau Margaux 2015 and 2 warm bathrobes, 1 adult-sized, 1 child-sized." Dana blinked. Chateau Margaux. That was a $1,500 bottle of wine. As Mr. Langley ushered Sophie inside, he turned to Dana one last time. "I expect privacy tonight," he added, his voice firm. Then the door clicked shut. Dana stood there for a long moment, gripping the backpack still clutched in her hands. It was too light. A cold shiver ran down her spine. Something was wrong, and she had no idea what she was about to uncover. A discovery that changes everything. Dana stood in the dimly lit penthouse hallway, still gripping the nearly weightless backpack that belonged to Sophie. Her heartbeat pounded against her ribs as she stared at the heavy double doors of room U-1845, the opulent penthouse suite where Victor Langley and the young girl had disappeared just moments ago. Something was off. The backpack barely had anything inside. It didn't feel like a child's bag. No weight of books, no small toys, no comforting keepsakes. Just fabric, thin and empty. The feeling of unease gnawed at her. She was trained to be discreet, to never pry into the personal lives of hotel guests, especially elite clients like Mr. Langley. Yet something about Sophie's demeanor, her worn-out clothes, and the eerie way Langley controlled her movements would not leave Dana's mind. She knew she had to do something. Taking a deep breath, Dana turned and made her way to the service elevator, gripping the backpack tightly. The ride down to the lobby was excruciatingly slow. When the doors finally slid open, the emptiness of the lobby greeted her. The night shift was always quieter, but tonight, the silence felt heavy. Ronald was nowhere in sight. Good. Dana hurried toward the housekeeping station, stepping into the break room where the only sound was the low hum of the coffee machine. She placed the backpack on the table, hesitating for only a moment before she unzipped it. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached inside. Nothing. Just a small, crumpled paper tucked into a corner. Dana carefully unfolded it. The paper was wrinkled, creased with frantic folds, and smudged at the edges, as if someone had been gripping it too tightly for too long. Her breath caught in her throat as she read the faint, childish handwriting. "Please help me. I don't belong to him. I want my mom." Dana's stomach dropped. Her fingers clenched the note as a cold wave of realization washed over her. Sophie had left this note on purpose. She had no toys, no luggage, no belongings because she wasn't supposed to be here. The girl was in trouble. Dana suddenly felt suffocated by the air in the break room. She needed to think, fast. She knew the hotel's strict policy. Do not interfere with guests. Do not question their circumstances. Do not disrupt the experience of the elite clientele. But how could she stay silent knowing a child might be in danger? She had to go back upstairs. The return to room U-1845. Dana straightened her uniform, forcing herself to look composed, and headed back toward the elevators. She tucked Sophie's note into her pocket, her fingers brushing against the crisp two $100 bills Langley had handed her earlier. Her blood boiled. He had paid her off, expecting her to stay silent. As the elevator glided up toward the penthouse, Dana steadied her nerves. She was just a maid, but that didn't mean she was going to let a child suffer in silence. She arrived at the hallway outside room U-1845. The Do Not Disturb sign still hung from the handle. Dana knocked softly, her heart racing. Silence. She knocked again, firmer this time. Still nothing. Glancing down the corridor to make sure no one was watching, she reached for the master key attached to her cleaning cart. Technically, she had a reason to enter. She could claim she was checking if they needed towels, fresh linens, or any other luxury accommodations. But she knew that wasn't why she was opening that door. With a quiet click, the lock disengaged. Taking a deep breath, Dana pushed the door open. The horrifying scene inside. The air inside the suite was stale. Dim golden light from the bedside lamps barely illuminated the massive room, casting long, eerie shadows across the luxurious space. Dana's eyes immediately scanned for Sophie. Her gaze landed on the chaotic mess that had once been a pristine dining table. Half-eaten food, wine bottles, 3 of them, stood empty, their crimson residue staining the expensive white tablecloth. A glass had been tipped over, its contents soaking into the carpet. A small plate sat untouched, with a grilled cheese sandwich. Exactly what Sophie had asked for. But she hadn't eaten. Dana's heart pounded as her eyes darted toward the bedroom door. It was slightly ajar, revealing a shadowy figure beneath the covers of the massive bed. Sophie. Dana moved cautiously toward the bed, her breath shallow. The girl's tiny form was curled up, her face buried into the soft pillow, her arms pulled tightly around herself. But something was wrong. She wasn't moving. Dana's stomach lurched as she leaned closer. "Sophie," she whispered. No response. A wave of terror surged through her as she carefully pulled back the sheets. Sophie's face was flushed, her breathing slow and uneven. Her lips had a faint purplish tinge. Dana's pulse skyrocketed. Something was terribly wrong. Her eyes flickered to the bedside table. And that's when she saw it. A small empty capsule, its fine white powdery residue barely visible against the dark surface. A drug. Dana's hands clenched into fists. He had drugged her. 1,000 thoughts raced through Dana's mind, but one overpowered them all. She had to get Sophie out of here. She carefully placed her hand on Sophie's shoulder and shook her gently. "Sophie, wake up," Dana urged, panic creeping into her voice. The girl did not stir. Dana's vision blurred with rage. She needed help. The race against time. Without wasting another second, Dana bolted from the bedroom and reached for the suite's landline. She dialed the front desk. "Front desk, this is Ronald speaking," came the familiar voice. Dana's grip tightened around the phone. "Ronald, I need you to call 911. Right now." A brief silence. "Dana, what are you talking about?" "It's Sophie. She's been drugged. I found her unconscious in the bed. You need to call emergency services immediately." Ronald's tone shifted instantly. "Dana, do you have any idea what you're saying? If you're wrong about this, we could be sued for false accusations against an elite guest." Dana nearly screamed in frustration. "I don't care to that. I need you to call no." A sharp intake of breath from Ronald. Then a pause. Finally, he spoke, his voice quiet but urgent. "All right. I'm calling now. Stay there." Dana hung up, her hands trembling. Her mind raced with the next step. Should she wait for the paramedics? Should she try to carry Sophie out of here herself? Before she could decide, the sound of a key card beeping at the door made her blood turn to ice. She turned just in time to see Victor Langley stepping back into the room. His dark eyes locked onto her. And he knew. Dana had been caught. The air crackled with tension. The look on his face wasn't surprise. It was rage. Dana's fingers twitched, ready to run. But before she could make a move, Mr. Langley took a slow step forward, his voice low and deadly. "You shouldn't have come back here, Dana." The world seemed to tilt as her worst nightmare began to unfold. Trapped in the lion's den. The door shut behind Victor Langley with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot in the silent suite. Dana's breath caught in her throat. Every muscle in her body tensed as she realized the danger she was in. She was trapped. Langley's dark eyes locked onto hers, and for the first time, she saw him for what he truly was. Gone was the charming, smooth-talking businessman who had arrived at the hotel with an air of wealth and importance. Now, his expression was something far more primal, far more dangerous, like a predator that had just discovered an intruder in its den. His hand hung loosely by his sides, but Dana could see the tension in his posture, the barely restrained violence simmering beneath his composed exterior. "You shouldn't have come back," he repeated, his voice dangerously calm. Dana forced herself to stand her ground, though her heart was pounding so violently she was sure he could hear it. "Sophie is sick," she said, keeping her voice steady despite the fear creeping up her spine. "She needs help." Langley's eyes flicked toward the bedroom door for a brief second before returning to Dana. His lips curled into a slow, deliberate smirk. "I see what's happening here," he said, shaking his head as if she had just made an absurd accusation. "You're confused. Overworked, I imagine. I don't blame you. Being the maid must be exhausting." Dana clenched her fists. "This isn't about me." She gestured toward the bedroom. "That little girl, she's unconscious. You did something to her." Langley exhaled through his nose, amusement flickering across his face. "You have a wild imagination, Miss Morales. Maybe you should get some sleep." He took a step forward. Dana instinctively took a step back, but her spine met the cold surface of the suite's bar counter. She had nowhere to go. "Look," Langley said, his voice lowering. "Let's be reasonable here. You've been very accommodating. Very attentive." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. "Why don't we forget this little misunderstanding? I'd hate for you to lose your job over something so insignificant." He slipped out a stack of crisp $100 bills, fanning them out like a deck of cards. Dana stared at the money. It was more than she made in 2 months. And she felt sick. This was hush money. Sophie was just a child. Drugged, unconscious, defenseless. And he thought he could make it all go away with a bribe. A cold fury ignited inside Dana. She looked Langley straight in the eye. "Go to hell," she spat. His smirk vanished. Dana ran. The chase through the penthouse. She made a break for the bedroom. If she could just reach Sophie, she could lock them inside and hold out until help arrived. But Langley was faster. She barely took 2 steps before his hand clamped around her wrist like a vice. "Where do you think you're going?" His voice was still calm, but his grip was brutal. Dana twisted, trying to wrench herself free, but he was strong. "I tried to be nice," Langley said, tightening his grip. "I really did, but you had to push, didn't you?" Dana's instincts screamed at her to fight. Her free hand shot up, grabbing a heavy wine bottle from the bar counter. She swung with everything she had. Crack! The glass shattered against his shoulder, sending shards flying. Langley let out a sharp curse, stumbling back just enough for Dana to break free. She sprinted toward the bedroom, her heart hammering. Behind her, Langley recovered fast. "You bitch," he roared. She reached the door and slammed it shut just as he lunged forward. The lock clicked into place. Dana pressed her back against the door, panting, her hands trembling as she reached into her pocket for her phone. Her fingers closed around nothing. Her phone. It was still on the bar counter. She had no way to call for help. A heavy thud shook the door as Langley pounded against it. "You have no idea who you're messing with," he bellowed. "You think you can just lock me out?" Dana ignored him and turned to Sophie. The girl hadn't moved. Dana knelt beside the bed, shaking Sophie's shoulder. "Sophie, sweetheart, wake up," she pleaded. "Come on, we have to go." Nothing. Panic surged through her. She placed 2 fingers against Sophie's neck, searching for a pulse. It was faint, too faint. Tears burned at Dana's eyes. She was running out of time. Langley kicked the door. "I swear to God, if you don't open this door, I'll—" Dana tuned him out, her mind racing. She needed to get out. She needed to get Sophie out. Her eyes darted toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. They led to the penthouse balcony, a 40-story drop to the streets below. Not an option. Her gaze shifted to the bathroom, the air vent. It was small, but maybe, just maybe, she could squeeze through. But first, she needed a distraction. The escape plan. Dana grabbed the bedside lamp and yanked it from the wall. With all her strength, she hurled it at the bedroom window. The glass didn't break, but the impact was loud enough to make Langley pause. Dana grabbed Sophie under her arms, dragging her toward the bathroom. Langley shouted from the other side of the door. "What the hell was that?" Dana ignored him. She reached the vent, kicked off the cover, and shoved Sophie's limp body inside. The girl was barely conscious, but she whimpered softly. Dana's heart leaped with relief. "Sophie, I need you to stay awake," Dana whispered. "We're getting out of here." The girl made a weak noise, her eyelids fluttering. Dana climbed in behind her, pulling the vent cover back into place just as the door burst open. Langley stormed in, breathing heavily, his eyes filled with pure rage. He scanned the room. Sophie. Silence. Then, his eyes snapped to the bathroom. Dana's blood froze. Slowly, Langley stalked forward. Dana held her breath. He stepped inside. Dana could see his shoes through the vent slats. He stopped inches away from where they were hidden. Then, he let out a low, chilling chuckle. "You can't hide forever," he murmured. "I always get what I want." He turned and walked out of the bathroom. Dana released a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. They had seconds before he came back. She pulled Sophie forward, crawling as fast as she could through the tight metal tunnel. The vent creaked under their weight, but Dana pushed forward, adrenaline overriding her fear. Finally, they reached an exit grate. Dana kicked it open, and they tumbled out onto the penthouse's emergency stairwell. For a split second, Dana could barely believe it worked. Then, she heard a roar of frustration from the bedroom. Langley had found the vent. Dana grabbed Sophie and ran. The race downward. She took the stairs 3 at a time, her legs burning, Sophie's weight slowing her down. Behind her, Langley's voice echoed down the stairwell. "You can't run from me, Dana." Tears blurred Dana's vision as she kept going. Then, voices below. "Police." She sobbed with relief. The last thing she heard before she reached safety was Langley screaming her name in pure rage, and then the cuffs snapping around his wrists. The aftermath of a nightmare. Dana's legs burned as she ran down the emergency stairwell, each step feeling heavier than the last. She clutched Sophie's frail body against her chest, her breath coming in sharp gasps. Her heart pounded, not just from exhaustion, but from pure terror. Behind her, Langley's furious screams echoed off the concrete walls. "You can't run from me, Dana." She could hear the pounding of his footsteps above her, getting closer, closing in. Then, a voice. Deep, commanding, authority in its tone. "Stop! Police!" Dana's heart leaped. She burst through the doorway of the 30th floor, stumbling into a hall filled with uniformed officers. "Help!" Dana gasped, her voice cracking. She barely had time to react before two officers rushed forward, steadying her. "Ma'am, what's going on?" one of them demanded. Dana sucked in a ragged breath. "Room U-1845, she managed. "That man, he's not her father. He drugged her. He tried to." She couldn't even finish the sentence. The stairwell door behind her slammed open. Victor Langley emerged, his face a mask of raw fury and desperation. His once perfect suit was disheveled, his tie loosened, sweat dripping down his forehead. The moment his eyes locked onto Dana and Sophie, he charged forward. "They two will do a man is 8 or he roared, pointing at Dana. His voice boomed through the hall, every bit as commanding as it had been when he first arrived at the hotel. For a split second, Dana panicked. Would they believe him? He looked every bit the wealthy, powerful businessman, while she was just a maid. But then, Sophie let out a weak, whimpering moan in Dana's arms. One of the officer's eyes snapped to the child, taking in her pale face, sluggish movements, and the wine-stained shirt sticking to her tiny frame. Something clicked. "Sir, back up. Now." The officers moved in instantly, guns drawn. Langley froze. His nostrils flared. His hands curled into fists. "Do you have any idea who I am?" He spat. "That is my daughter." "Put your hands where we can see them," one of the officers ordered, stepping closer. Langley's jaw clenched so hard Dana thought his teeth might crack. And then, to her absolute horror, he reached into his jacket. The officers reacted instantly. G-heat on the ground. Langley hesitated. Then, too late. Thunk. One of the officers slammed him to the floor. Dana flinched as Langley let out a guttural snarl, his cheek pressed against the tile as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. "You have no idea who you're messing with," Langley seethed. "I'll have your BADGS for this." But no one was listening. Dana could barely breathe as an officer gently took Sophie from her arms, lowering the limp child onto a stretcher. "She's been drugged," Dana choked out, her throat tight. There was wine in the room. "Pills. Please, just save her." A paramedic nodded quickly, adjusting the oxygen mask over Sophie's face. "We'll take care of her, ma'am. You did good." The words barely registered. All Dana could do was watch as the girl was wheeled away, disappearing down the hall. She had saved her, but at what cost? Interrogation and the weight of the truth. 2 hours later, Dana sat in a sterile, cold police station, her uniform stiff with sweat and exhaustion. She had given her statement twice, but she was still trying to wrap her head around everything that had happened. Langley had been taken into custody, but it hadn't been easy. Even after being tackled, he had shouted, ranted, threatened. He had promised lawsuits, demanded lawyers, named people in power, people Dana had never heard of but who, judging by the way the officers reacted, were very real. Would he actually get away with this? The thought made her stomach twist. A soft knock at the door made her jerk upright. Detective Sarah Calloway entered, her expression unreadable. She had sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "Dana," she greeted, sliding into the seat across from her. Dana's fingers twisted in her lap. "Is Sophie?" "Stable," Calloway answered. "She was heavily drugged, but the hospital is flushing it out of her system. She's going to be okay." Relief hit Dana so hard she nearly collapsed. But then Calloway's gaze darkened. Victor Langley, on the other hand, is making things difficult. Dana's breath caught. Difficult how? Calloway exhaled. He's sticking to his story. Claims Sophie is his biological daughter. Claims you tried to kidnap her and cause a scandal. His lawyers are already involved, and he's calling in some powerful favors. Dana's stomach dropped. Her worst fear was coming true. But Calloway continued, her eyes hardening. We're not letting him walk away from this. She pulled a file from her briefcase, flipping it open. We already started digging into him. And guess what? Sophie Langley does not exist. Dana's blood ran cold. What? Calloway slid a document toward her. Victor Langley has no records of ever having a daughter. No birth certificate. No legal guardianship papers. Nothing. Dana's heart pounded. Then, who is she? Calloway's lips pressed into a thin line. That's what we're trying to find out. A chill crept over Dana's skin. Sophie was never his daughter. Which meant she had been taken. The truth finally uncovered. The next few hours were a blur of rapid-fire questions, phone calls, and frantic searches. Then, at 5 a.m., the breakthrough came. Calloway burst into the room, her expression grim. We found her. Dana's entire body locked up. Who? Sophie's real family. Calloway dropped a missing persons poster onto the table. And there she was. The same bright green eyes. The same soft curls. The same little girl. Only in the photo, Sophie looked happy. She was wearing clean clothes, holding a stuffed rabbit. And below the image, bold red letters screamed, "Missing. Olivia Carter." Dana's breath caught. Her name wasn't Sophie. It was Olivia. And she had been missing for over 6 months. Calloway's voice was tight with restrained fury. We contacted her mother. She reported Olivia missing when she was taken from a playground in Chicago. Dana's vision blurred. Chicago was over 1,000 miles away. How the hell did Olivia end up here? Calloway's jaw clenched. We think Langley bought her. Dana's entire body turned to ice. What? Calloway's voice was like stone. We suspect he's been involved in trafficking children. Olivia might not be his first. Dana's hands shook violently. She had known something was wrong, but she hadn't known it was this. Sophie, no, Olivia, had been stolen. Dana pressed a hand over her mouth as tears threatened to spill over. But then she straightened. She had done something that mattered. She had saved a child. And now, she was going to make sure Langley never hurt another one again. The battle for justice. Dana sat in the cold, sterile interrogation room of the police station, staring blankly at the missing persons poster that lay on the table before her. Sophie wasn't Sophie. Her real name was Olivia Carter. She had been missing for over 6 months, taken from a playground in Chicago, 1,000 miles away from this city. And Victor Langley, he hadn't rescued her. He hadn't adopted her. He had stolen her. Or worse, bought her. A sickening wave of nausea rolled through Dana's stomach. She had seen it in his eyes, the way he controlled Olivia, the way he had tried to silence Dana when she started asking questions. She had been so close to walking away. And if she had ignored her gut feeling, like Ronald told her to, Olivia would have disappeared forever. Dana swallowed hard, forcing herself to breathe. Across from her, Detective Sarah Calloway tapped her pen against the table, deep in thought. The tension in the room was thick, humming with the weight of the discovery they had just made. Langley's lawyers are already working overtime, Calloway said, her voice tight. They're throwing everything at this. They're saying you broke into his suite, that you're fabricating this entire story, that you're trying to frame a respected businessman. Dana's hands curled into fists. Of course, Langley wasn't just a kidnapper. He was a wealthy, powerful kidnapper. And powerful men never went down easily. Does he know we found Olivia's real identity? Dana asked. Calloway nodded grimly. He does, and he's pissed. Dana let out a sharp breath, gripping the edge of the table to steady herself. Is Olivia safe? She asked. Yes, Calloway assured her. She's under medical supervision, but she's stable. Once she's well enough, we're reuniting her with her mother. The thought softened some of the tension in Dana's chest. At least Olivia was safe now. But Langley, he was still a problem. Calloway leaned forward, her sharp gaze locking onto Dana's. "The problem is," she continued, "we need more evidence. Langley is too powerful. His lawyers are too good. The second he's out on bail, he'll vanish. And he might take more kids with him." Dana's pulse quickened. "What do you need?" she asked. Calloway hesitated, studying her carefully. "Something that connects him to Olivia's abduction," she said. "Something that proves he's done this before." A thought hit Dana like a freight train. "The security footage," she blurted. Calloway frowned. "What security footage?" "The hotel's security cameras," Dana said quickly, adrenaline surging through her veins. "Langley checked in without any real luggage, just a single suitcase, and Olivia barely had anything. That's not normal for a father and daughter on vacation. He wasn't planning on staying long. He was moving her." Calloway's eyes lit up with understanding. "If we can prove that, we can use it against him," she muttered, already pulling out her phone. "We need that footage now." Breaking through the system, Calloway and Dana rushed out of the interrogation room and into the bustling heart of the police station. The atmosphere was tense, officers moving quickly as more reports flooded in. Langley's lawyers were already making calls, pulling strings. They knew this was bad for their client. The window to nail him was closing. "We need a warrant for the Grand Evermore's security footage," Calloway told one of the officers at the main desk. The officer grimaced. "That's going to take time." "We don't have time," Dana snapped before she could stop herself. The officer blinked at her in surprise, but Calloway nodded. "Langley has connections," she said. "If we don't move fast, that footage will accidentally get erased." A tense silence followed. Then Calloway made a decision. "Forget the warrant. We're going to the hotel ourselves. Back to the Grand Evermore." Dana had never felt so exposed walking through the lobby of the Grand Evermore Hotel. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was the woman who exposed Victor Langley. And everyone knew it. Staff members whispered as she passed. Ronald was standing behind the reception desk, his face pale, staring at her like she had just brought a bomb into the hotel. "Dana," he hissed, storming toward her. "What the hell do you think you're doing? You brought the cops into the hotel." Dana squared her shoulders. "They're here for the security footage," she said, her voice steady. Ronald's expression flickered between fear and rage. "Dana, you're going to ruin your career over this." "I don't care," she shot back. "That little girl was kidnapped. And if we don't get that footage, Langley is going to walk free." Ronald hesitated. Then, to Dana's shock, he let out a shaky breath and nodded. "I already pulled the footage," he admitted. "I saw him bring her in. And I saw the way she looked at him." He swallowed hard. "It didn't feel right," he whispered. Dana felt a rush of gratitude. "Then show us," she said. The truth on camera. The security room was small and windowless, lined with monitors displaying every inch of the hotel. Ronald sat down at the main console, his fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. "This is last night," he murmured, pulling up the footage from Langley's check-in. The screen flickered. And then, there he was. Langley, stepping out of the black limousine. The camera angle shifted to the lobby. Dana watched herself enter the frame, greeting him. Watched her first suspicions form as she noticed Olivia's clothes, her wide-eyed fear. Then, another shift. The elevator footage. Olivia stood stiffly in the corner of the elevator, clutching her small backpack. Langley barely acknowledged her. And then, in a single moment that made Dana's blood turn to ice, Langley turned to Olivia and grabbed her wrist. Hard. Even with no sound, Dana could see the way Olivia winced, the way she shrunk back. And Langley, he just tightened his grip. Calloway exhaled sharply. "That's it," she said, her voice like steel. "That's enough." She turned to Ronald. "Save that footage," she ordered, "and send it to the station. Now." Ronald nodded, his face tight with determination. Dana sat back, shaking from the adrenaline. It was over. Langley was done. The arrest that shocked the city. The next morning, the headlines were everywhere. Billionaire abusing ESSNN ARRESTD for child kidnapping his TANDL. Victor Langeli exposed. Maid even COVER's dark secret in luxury hotel. Kidnapped found alive after 6 months. Maid hailed as hero. Dana couldn't believe it. She had done it. Olivia was finally safe. Langley was facing life in prison, with multiple families now coming forward, claiming he had been involved in more disappearances. She had saved her. But more than that, she had stopped a monster. And for the first time in her life, Dana Morales knew she had done something that truly mattered. A hero's reckoning. The headlines were everywhere. Vi Lione business man Victor Langeli arrested for child abduction. Missing child found after 6 months. Hotel Maid exposes dark secret. Maid, 2RN's hero. How one woman took down a powerful monster. Dana Morales sat in her tiny apartment, staring at her phone screen, unable to process how the world had changed in just 24 hours. She was nobody, just a hotel maid. And yet, she had done what no one else dared to do. She had saved a child. But as she scrolled through the news articles, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Her breath hitched. Had Langley's lawyers finally come for her? Shaking, she answered. Hello. A pause. Then, Ms. Morales, a woman's voice, soft but raw. Dana sat up straight. Yes, this is Dana. The woman on the other end exhaled sharply, as if holding back tears. My name is Rachel Carter, she said, voice thick with emotion. I'm Olivia's mother. Dana froze. Rachel's voice broke. Thank you. Thank you for saving my baby. A lump formed in Dana's throat. She's safe now, Dana said, gripping the phone like a lifeline. There was a long pause. Then, sobbing, raw, gut-wrenching. I thought I'd never see her again, Rachel choked out. 6 months, Dana. 6 months of hell. And you? She swallowed hard. You brought her back to me. Dana squeezed her eyes shut. I just did what I had to, she whispered. Rachel let out a weak laugh. You did what no one else would. Another silence. Then Rachel asked, would you like to meet her? Dana's eyes flew open. Her voice caught in her throat. You don't have to. She's been asking for you. Dana's heart stopped. Rachel sniffled. She calls you her angel. Dana's breath shuddered out of her. She thought of Olivia's wide, frightened eyes when she first saw the hotel. The way she clutched her backpack like it was the only thing in the world that belonged to her. The way she whispered, please help me. And then she knew. I'd love to, Dana whispered. A meeting that changed everything. A few days later, Dana found herself standing outside a modest suburban house, gripping a bouquet of flowers so tight her knuckles turned white. The door swung open. Rachel Carter stood there, a woman with Olivia's same green eyes, but aged with grief and exhaustion. But when she saw Dana, she smiled through her tears. Come in, she said softly. Dana stepped inside. And then, a small, timid voice called out from the hallway. Miss Dana. Dana turned, and there she was. Olivia. She looked healthier, dressed in cozy pajamas, her hair neatly combed. But there was something in her eyes, a flicker of hesitation, of uncertainty. Dana knelt down, holding her breath. Would Olivia even remember her? Then, suddenly, the little girl rushed forward and threw her arms around Dana's neck. Dana froze. Then she melted. Tears slid down her face as she held Olivia close, feeling the girl's small body tremble in her grasp. You're really here, Olivia whispered. Dana pressed a gentle kiss to the top of her head. "I'm here, sweetheart," she murmured. "And you're safe." A small sob escaped Olivia's throat. And in that moment, Dana knew. She had done something that mattered. Langley's fall. While Dana spent the day with Olivia and Rachel, the world was still erupting with news of Victor Langley's arrest. Langley had tried everything. He threw his money, his lawyers, his connections, but nothing could erase the security footage. The image of him grabbing Olivia's wrist, forcing her to follow him into the elevator, had gone viral. Worse, the FBI had gotten involved. Because Olivia wasn't the only child he had taken, a pattern of missing children was starting to emerge, and Dana had just exposed one of the largest trafficking rings in the country. A life forever changed. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Dana's life would never be the same. The hotel fired her, of course. Not officially. There had been a settlement, an NDA, a quiet warning from Ronald. They couldn't be associated with such a scandal. Dana had expected that. But she hadn't expected what came next. Job offers. Journalists wanting her story. People calling her a hero. She wasn't used to it. She wasn't comfortable with it. But then, one day, Rachel Carter called. "I have an idea," she had said. "Something I think you were meant to do." And just like that, Dana Morels became a child advocate. She worked with families of missing children, helping bring attention to cases that were often ignored. And every time she looked into a parent's desperate, hopeless eyes, she remembered Olivia. And she fought harder. One last surprise. Months after the arrest, Dana was at her tiny kitchen table, sifting through paperwork when her phone rang. Rachel. Smiling, Dana answered. "Hey, Rach." But Rachel's voice was choked with emotion. "Turn on the news." Dana froze. Her stomach flipped as she grabbed the remote and flipped the channel. And there, on the screen, was Victor Langley. Not in a courtroom, not in a suit, but in an orange jumpsuit, being led into a high-security prison. No bail, no chance to run, no more victims. Dana covered her mouth with her hands. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she let out a laugh of relief. It was over. Langley was gone. And because of her, Olivia was home. Final moments. That night, Dana received a video message. She opened it, curious. It was from Rachel. She pressed play. The screen flickered, and there was Olivia, holding a stuffed rabbit, smiling. "Hi, Miss Dana," Olivia said shyly. "I just wanted to say, thank you for saving me. You're my angel." Dana's breath caught in her throat, her vision blurred with tears. Because in that moment, she knew this was what she was meant to do. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was a fighter, a protector, a hero. And she would never stop fighting for kids like Olivia. Ever.